Hi Guy, tonight we journey back to the samurai period of ancient Japan, witnessing the daily life of Emi Araki, a roof tile maker. Feel the biting wind and falling snow against your skin as you press clay into molds, a life far removed from the elegant courts. An imperial decree announces the sudden exile of a noblewoman, shattering the quiet world of her distant cousin, a humble tile maker named Emi, who is forced to navigate the dangerous consequences. You probably won't survive the next few hours without a warm drink. This is brutal history, and it's bedtime. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Chapter 1. A roof tile maker's quiet life. The clay is cold. It's a deep, wet cold that seeps through the tips of your fingers and settles into your bones, a constant companion in this life you've chosen. You are Emi Araki, and this is your world, a small, drafty workshop smelling of damp earth, pine smoke, and the faint, metallic scent of the coming snow. Outside, beyond the thin paper of the shoji screen, the world is a canvas of swirling white flakes descending upon the iconic curved roofs of the red pagoda. The snow falls with a relentless, whispering hush, muffling the sounds of the capital, leaving you in a bubble of quiet industry. You lift another heavy slab of gray clay onto the worn wooden bench. It lands with a satisfying, wet asterisk, wump asterisk. Your movements are a rhythm, a meditation perfected over years. Scoop, knead, press. You work the air from the clay, your palms and knuckles pushing and folding the dense material until it's perfectly smooth, perfectly uniform. It's like a very, very low-stakes version of playing with dough, except you can't eat the final product. Well, you could, but I wouldn't recommend it for your dental plan. You press the prepared clay into a curved wooden mold, your thumbs smoothing the surface, ensuring there are no hidden bubbles, no imperfections that could crack in the heat of the kiln. Each tile, a kawara, is a small promise of shelter. A promise that a family will stay dry, that a temple will stand against the seasons. There is an honest satisfaction in this. Your life is not one of silk kimonos or courtly intrigue. It is a life of mud and fire, and you find a simple, optimistic joy in the solid, tangible things you create. The gentle rhythm is broken, not by a sound you know, not the distant clang of a temple bell or the call of a street vendor, but by a sharp, authoritative rap on the wooden frame of your workshop door. It's a sound that doesn't belong here. People who visit a tile maker usually shuffle, they call out softly, they don't knock. You wipe your hands on your rough cotton apron, a futile gesture that only succeeds in smearing the gray clay into a new pattern. You slide the shoji screen open. Two men stand there, silhouetted against the blinding white of the snow-filled courtyard. They are samurai, but not the wandering ronin or local guards you occasionally see. These are officials, you can tell, by the stiff, formal cut of their dark blue asterisk kamishimo, the starched shoulders jutting out like angry wings. Their hands rest on the hilts of their swords, a casual posture that is anything but. Their faces are placid, impassive masks that seem entirely immune to the cold. They look like they've never seen a smudge of dirt in their lives, which is a real achievement in a world without washing machines. Your heart gives a nervous little flutter. You bow your head, your eyes fixed on the packed, snowy ground in front of your workshop. "Honorable sirs," you murmur, "how may I be of service?" Quote. The taller of the two men, the one with a thin, severe mustache, steps forward. His sandals make no sound on the snow. He doesn't look at you, but at a point somewhere over your head, as if addressing the pagoda itself. "You are Araki Emi?" he asks, his voice as flat and cold as a winter stone. "I am," you confirm, your own voice feeling small and insignificant. He makes a slight gesture with his chin, and the second man steps forward, unrolling a scroll with a crisp, rustling sound that cuts through the quiet air. The paper is a creamy white, impossibly clean, held in place by two dark wooden rollers. An imperial decree. Your breath catches in your throat. These are things you hear about in stories, whispers of events that happen to other people, to great lords and ladies in faraway castles. They don't arrive at the doorstep of a tile maker's shed. The man begins to read, his voice a droning, formal monotone that lists titles and honors before getting to the heart of the matter. You catch phrases, by the authority of the shogun, for the continued tranquility of the realm, a threat to the established harmony. They are just words, clouds of ink on paper until he says the name, the noblewoman, Lady Yamauchi Masako. The world seems to tilt. Lady Masako, your mother's cousin. A woman you haven't seen in a decade, not since your family fell from favor and traded courtly life for the grime of the merchant class. But the blood tie is there. A thin but unbreakable thread connecting your muddy hands to her silk sleeves, is hereby found guilty of conspiring against the court, the official drones on. For this crime, she is sentenced to immediate exile. Her lands, titles, and properties are forfeit to the shogunate. She will be escorted to the province of Sado to live out her days in isolation. Quote, Sado, the island, a cold, windswept rock in the sea, a place people were sent to be forgotten. The man finishes reading. He rolls the scroll back up with a snap, the sound as final as a closing gate. He tucks it back into his robes. They haven't asked you anything, they haven't accused you of anything. They have simply delivered information. A piece of news as sharp and deadly as a blade, delivered right to your door. You stand there, frozen, your mind racing. Why here? Why you? Is this a warning? A threat? The severe-looking official finally lowers his gaze to meet yours. His eyes are empty of pity or anger or anything at all. The matter is concluded, he says. They turn in unison, their movements precise and economical, and walk away. They don't even wait for a tip. Rude. Their dark figures recede into the swirling snow, leaving only their footprints as evidence they were ever there. Soon, the snow will cover those too, and it will be as if it never happened. But it did. You slowly slide the paper screen closed, the latch clicking shut with a soft, hollow sound. The workshop, your sanctuary, suddenly feels like a cage. The familiar smell of clay is suffocating. You look down at your hands, at the gray mud caked around your fingernails. An hour ago, you were just a roof tile maker. An honest, open-minded woman with a simple, optimistic view of the world. Now you are the cousin of an exiled trader. The implications spread through your mind like a drop of ink in clear water. The ripples will touch everything: your small business, your friends, your family. Your brother, Uesugi Kagekatsu, polishing swords in his quiet back room, he would need to know. He was always the more pragmatic one. And what of others? People like Noe Yamauchi, the quiet papermaker, whose family name was now suddenly, terrifyingly linked to yours through this decree. You look at the half-finished tile on your bench. A simple object, meant to provide shelter and protection, but you realize with a sudden, chilling clarity that there is no roof thick enough, no wall strong enough to protect you from the will of a shogun. The snow outside the red pagoda seems to fall harder now, colder, as if trying to bury the entire world. You don't remember deciding to move. One moment you are staring at the unblemished clay on your bench. The next, you are pulling on a thick, padded Honton jacket over your work clothes, your movements stiff and clumsy. The cold has finally won, creeping past your skin and into your will. You need your cousin. You need Kagekatsu. Pushing the shoji open again, you step out into the biting wind. The snow is thicker now, a dizzying, swirling vortex of white that stings your cheeks and tries to steal the breath from your lungs. The world you knew just this morning, the familiar path around the red pagoda, the distant shouts of merchants, the outlines of neighboring workshops, has been erased, replaced by a soft, treacherous landscape of white mounds and shifting curtains of snow. Each step is a struggle, your straw sandals sinking deep, the cold slush seeping through to your feet. It feels like you're wading through a dream, a silent, chilling nightmare from which you can't wake up. You find his workshop tucked away in a narrow alley, a place easily missed if you didn't know it was there. There is no sign, only a dark wooden door and a single low-hanging lantern swinging in the wind, its oiled paper glowing a warm, honeyed orange against the blue-gray twilight. It's a beacon in the storm. You don't knock. You slide the heavy door aside and step into the small, dark antechamber. The air here is different. It's warm, for one thing, heated by a small charcoal brazier glowing in the corner, but the smell is what truly sets it apart from your own world of wet earth. This place smells of metal, of sharpening stones, of clove oil, and something else, something clean and sharp, like lightning trapped in a bottle. It is the scent of a finished blade. From a back room, separated by a heavy curtain, comes the sound. Steady, rhythmic, abrasive whisper. It is the sound of steel being drawn across a wet stone. The sound of kagekatsu at work. It's a sound that has always calmed you. A sound of patient, focused creation. Today, it is the only thing that seems to make sense. You pull back the curtain and step into the dim light. The room is small and spare. Racks of swords in various states of polish line one wall, their plain wooden scabbards, or shirasaya, giving no hint of the deadly beauty they protect. On the floor, Usugi Kagekatsu kneels before a long, low trough of water. He is leaning over a blade, his whole body a study in concentration. He is younger than you, but he has the quiet gravitas of an old man. His shoulders are broad. His hands, unlike your clay-caked ones, are meticulously clean, though scarred with a lattice-work of fine silvery lines, the price of a moment's inattention in his trade. He doesn't look up, but the rhythm of his work falters for a half-second. Me, he says, his voice a low rumble. The snow must be deep to bring a tile-maker out of her den. He resumes his work, the steady whisper of stone on steel filling the room once more. You sink to your knees on a woven mat near the brazier, stretching your numb fingers towards its warmth. The words feel trapped in your throat, a cold lump of fear. Officials came, you manage, your voice thin and reedy. From the shogun. The sound stops. Kagekatsu carefully lifts the blade from the stone, his eyes scanning its length, catching the faint reflection from the single oil lamp hanging above him. He lays it gently on a clean cloth beside him. Only then does he turn to face you fully. His friendly face, usually quick to smile, is serious. His eyes, dark and intelligent, search yours. Tell me everything, he says, and you do. The words tumble out of you, a messy, frantic flood of information. The stiff-shouldered samurai, the pristine scroll, the droning voice, the sentence of exile. You tell him the name that has been echoing in your head, the name that connects your humble life to this grand, terrible event, Lady Yamauchi Masako. Kagekatsu listens without interruption. He doesn't show surprise, only a deep, thoughtful stillness. He picks up a soft, oiled cloth and begins to wipe down the blade with slow, deliberate strokes. It's as if the familiar, repetitive action helps him to think. When you finish, the silence in the room is broken only by the hiss of the wind outside and the faint crackle of the coals in the brazier. I knew this was coming, he says finally, his gaze fixed on the sword in his hands. Not the how or the when, but the what. You knew? Your voice is a disbelieving squeak. How could you possibly know? Quote. He sets the sword aside and finally gives you his full attention. Imi, what do you see when you look at a roof tile? Quote. The question is so strange it throws you off balance. I see clay, a shape. I see shelter. Exactly, he says. You see the thing itself. I polish swords. I work for samurai, for retainers, for the households of minor lords. They do not see a sword as just a piece of steel. They see it as a symbol of their power, their status, their history. And when they come to collect their blades, they talk. They boast. They complain. They whisper. He leans forward slightly, his voice dropping lower. You see the honest surface of things, Emmy. I am paid to see the flaws hidden beneath. He lets that sink in for a moment. The rhythmic scraping was not just the sound of work, it was the sound of listening. This was not about a crime, he continues, his voice barely a whisper now. Lady Masako was no more a conspirator than you are. This was a culling, a removal. She was inconvenient. Inconvenient? To whom? Quote. To her own family, Kagekatsu says, and the name he speaks next lands in the quiet room like a stone. To the household of Noe Yamauchi. The name is familiar. You know of her. Everyone in the capital does. Noe Yamauchi, the papermaker. She is known for producing the most exquisite, sought-after pruawashi paper in the city. Her work is famed for its creamy texture and impossible thinness, favored by poets, artists, and the imperial court itself. You've always pictured her as you've heard her described. A quiet, almost ethereal figure, perpetually distracted with ink stains on her delicate fingers. An artist, lost in her craft. Kagekatsu gives a short, mirthless laugh, as if reading your mind. Do not be fooled by the ink-stained artist, little cousin. That absent-minded persona is the most brilliant thing she has ever crafted. It's a mask. Beneath it is a mind as sharp and as cold as this. He gestures to the polished blade beside him. And far more cruel, he explains. The Yamauchi clan has two powerful competing branches. Lady Masako's was the elder, the more respected, with deep ties to the old court families. Noe's branch was newer, wealthier from trade, but desperate for the legitimacy and influence that Masako's family possessed. For years, a quiet war has been waged between them, a war of whispers, of alliances, of strategic marriages, and social slights. Noe has been playing a very long, very patient game, Kagekatsu says. She places her paper in the hands of the powerful, but she also places words in their ears. I heard it myself, months ago. A retainer of Lord Matsudera, a man whose entire career depends on the shogun's favor, was here. He spoke of a poisonous branch of the Yamauchi clan that needed to be pruned for the health of the tree. He was admiring a sheet of paper as he said it. Paper, he said, was a gift from the brilliant artist Noe Yamauchi. Quote, "A chill, entirely separate from the winter cold, snakes its way down your spine. The official's words come back to you. For the continued tranquility of the realm. Zeus, a threat to the established harmony." They were not the shogun's words. They were Noe's words, polished and presented to the shogun until he believed they were his own. She hadn't used a sword or an army. She had used paper and whispers. So she framed her own kinswoman? You ask, the thought sickening. She created a story, and she made the right people believe it, Kagekatsu corrects. With Lady Masako gone, her titles, her influence, her access to the court, it all flows to the next ranking member of the clan. It flows to Noe's father. And Noe, the quiet papermaker, becomes one of the most powerful unmarried women in the capital. Quote, "You stare into the glowing coals of the brazier, your mind reeling. The simple, brutal event of the morning has fractured into 100 sharp, glittering pieces of intrigue. It's a world you cannot comprehend, a world of shadows and lies that exist just beneath the surface of your own. Why are you telling me this?" you whisper. "What does this have to do with me? I make tiles." Kagekatsu's friendly face is gone, replaced by a look of grim concern. "Because you are Araki Imi. Your mother was a cousin to Lady Masako. The blood tie is thin, Imi, but it is there. A historian could find it. A rival could use it." Quote, he leans in, his eyes locking with yours. To a woman like Noe Yamauchi, a plan is not complete until every loose thread is snipped. Every potential complication is smoothed away. A distant cousin of her vanquished rival, a cousin living humbly, quietly, right here in the capital under the shadow of the Red Pagoda. You are a loose thread, Emmy. Quote, "The workshop, which had felt so warm and safe, now feels terribly exposed. The single lantern seems to cast long, grasping shadows on the wall. What do I do?" The question is a plea. "For now, nothing," he says, his voice firm. "You go back to your workshop. You press your clay. You fire your tiles. You be the honest, open-minded, optimistic person you have always been. You become so boring, so insignificant, that you are not worth her notice. Do not speak of this. Do not ask questions. Do not even look at a sheet of fine paper for too long. Watch everyone. Trust no one. Just survive. The snow will eventually melt. We have to be here when it does." Quote, he picks up the sword again, its polished surface reflecting the wavering lamplight, a sliver of cold, dangerous beauty. He places it back on the whetstone. The sound resumes its steady whispering rhythm, but it is no longer calming. It is the sound of a blade being sharpened, and you walk out of the little workshop and back into the swirling snow, with the chilling certainty that somewhere out there in the storm, an enemy you never knew you had is watching and waiting. Kagekatsu's advice was wise. It was the advice of a survivor, a man who understood the deadly currents that flowed just beneath the placid surface of their world. Hide. Be small. Be forgotten. It was the only sensible thing to do. And you, standing in your cold workshop, the smell of damp earth filling your lungs, knew you could not do it. Your optimism wasn't a mask. It was a core part of you, and it rebelled against the idea of cowering in the shadows. Your honesty demanded you look truth in the face, even if that face was framed by lies. You couldn't just accept this. You couldn't build a life on a foundation of fear. You had to see her. You had to understand the woman who could use whispers like a sword and paper like a shield. You cleaned the clay from your hands more thoroughly than you had in years, scrubbing until your skin was raw. You changed into your best clothes. Still humble, a simple indigo-dyed cotton kimono, but clean and mended. You felt like a child playing dress-up, trying to present a version of yourself that could stand in the same room as a woman who moved shoguns. The snow had lessened from a blinding fury to a steady, silent fall. It draped the capital in a thick, sound-dampening blanket of white, making the world seem both pure and treacherous. The workshop of Noe Yamauchi was not hidden away like Kagekatsu's. It stood on a respectable street near the merchant's quarter, a place of quiet prosperity. The building was a testament to understated elegance. Its dark, oiled timbers were perfectly joined, its white paper screens immaculate against the gray sky. There was no mud, no clutter, no sign of the messy labor that must take place within. It was less a workshop and more a shrine to itself. You paused at the entrance, your breath misting in the frigid air. You were a tile maker, your hands full of grit and earth. You were about to step into a world of impossible cleanliness, a world built on pulp and water and air. You slid the screen door open. The air that greeted you was a shock. It was warm and humid, carrying a scent you'd never experienced before. The clean, slightly sweet smell of boiling plant fibers, like fresh laundry and green tea combined. The antechamber was empty, save for a single, perfect scroll of a carp swimming upstream hanging on the wall. The silence was profound, broken only by a soft, rhythmic sloshing sound from deeper within. A young woman in a simple gray kimono appeared, bowing low. "May I help you?" she asked, her voice a whisper. I am here to see Yamauchi-sama," you said, your own voice sounding rough and loud in the stillness. "I am a distant relative." The woman's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. She bowed again and disappeared behind another screen. You were left alone with the painted carp, its inky eye seeming to watch you with ancient wisdom. A moment later, the woman returned. "Yamauchi-sama will see you? Please, this way." Quote. She led you into the heart of the workshop. The sight stopped you in your tracks. The room was long and filled with a soft, diffused light from a wall of paper screens. Large, shallow wooden vats lined the floor, each filled with a milky, pulpy liquid. Racks of bamboo stood nearby, holding drying sheets of paper, each one a field of perfect, unblemished white. And in the center of it all a woman stood, her back to you. It was Noe Yamauchi. She was ladling the wet pulp onto a fine bamboo screen, her movements a slow, mesmerizing ballet. She dipped the screen into the vat, lifted it, and with a series of gentle, practiced tilts and shakes, she coaxed the fibers into a thin, even layer. Water cascaded from the frame, catching the light like a veil of diamonds. She wore a dark blue kimono, its sleeves tied back with a simple cord. Her hair was pinned up with a single, unadorned wooden stick. She looked exactly as you'd heard her described, an artist lost in her craft, calm, absent-minded. She set the screen down on a felted cloth, pressing it gently before turning to face you. Her face was a perfect oval, her features delicate. Her eyes, however, were not absent-minded at all. They were dark, sharp, and utterly still, taking in every detail of your humble clothes, your reddened hands, your nervous posture. "You are Araki Emi," she said. It was not a question. Her voice was like her workshop, quiet, clean, and without warmth. You bowed, your head low. "Yamauchi-sama, I am sorry to intrude on your work." "My work is my life," she said, gesturing vaguely at the vats of pulp. "It is an honest pursuit. Simple ingredients, bark, water, patience, transformed into something of beauty and purpose. Not unlike your own craft, I imagine, clay and fire." The comparison felt like a deliberate jab, a way of establishing a false parity between her courtly art and your muddy trade. "The news of Lady Masako's exile. It was a shock," you said, deciding that directness was your only tool. "She is a kinswoman to us both." Noe picked up a finished sheet of paper from a nearby stack. She held it up to the light, her slender fingers tracing its invisible texture. The paper was so thin it was almost translucent, yet it held its form, strong and resilient. "The shogun's judgment is absolute," she said, her eyes still on the paper. "It is a tragedy when a part of one's family proves unworthy. A branch that grows twisted must be pruned for the health of the tree." It was the exact phrase Kagekatsu had reported. Hearing it from her own lips sent a shiver through you. This was no absent-minded artist. This was the architect. I knew her, you pressed on, your heart thumping against your ribs. She was a woman of honor. This talk of conspiracy, it doesn't ring true. Noe finally lowered the paper and met your gaze. A faint, knowing smile touched her lips, a smile that did not reach her dark, cold eyes. Honor, she repeated, tasting the word. Honor is a complex thing, Araki-san. It is not a solid object, like one of your roof tiles. It is more like this paper. It appears fragile, but its strength is in its purity. A single speck of grit, a single misplaced fiber, and the entire sheet is ruined. It must be perfect. She took a step closer, the scent of sweet pulp and clean water enveloping you. My family understands this. We have tended the legacy of our name for generations. We remember every mark of favor and every stain of dishonor. She turned and walked over to a low table where brushes and an inkstone sat. She didn't invite you to sit. You remained standing, a humble petitioner in her pristine sanctuary. My great-grandfather, she began, her voice taking on a storyteller's cadence as she began to grind ink on the stone, the soft, scraping sound filling the quiet, was a man of great foresight. He saw that the wealth of the future was not just in rice, but in trade. In art, he sought to purchase a tract of barren hillside from a neighboring lord, to cultivate *Mitsumata* for our paper. A worthless piece of land to anyone else. She paused, dipping her brush into the newly made ink. But that land was controlled by Lady Masako's great-grandfather, a man of the old court, a man who saw trade as vulgar. He refused the sale, not for any strategic reason, but out of pure spite. To remind my family of our lesser station, he said our hands were dirty with commerce, while his were clean. A stain, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. A stain on our family's honor that was never cleansed. Quote, she lifted the brush and, with a single, fluid stroke, painted a character onto a sheet of her perfect paper, the character for debt. The whole sordid story clicked into place. This wasn't about the tranquility of the realm. It wasn't even just about raw ambition. It was a cold, calculated act of revenge, nursed for generations. A feud over a worthless piece of land and a century-old insult had festered, until it blossomed into this act of devastating destruction. Lady Masako's exile wasn't politics. It was payment for a debt she probably never even knew she owed. A family must protect its legacy, Noe continued, admiring her calligraphy. It must remove any imperfections. It must ensure its story is written on a clean page. She placed the brush down and looked at you, her gaze sweeping over you one last time, from your worn sandals to your anxious face. It is a messy business, clearing away old dirt. One must be very thorough. Find every stone, every clump of earth, every bit of clay. The threat, when it came, was as subtle and as sharp as a paper cut. It was a direct acknowledgement that she knew exactly who you were, what you did, and what you represented. Another small, dirty imperfection, a loose thread from Masako's side of the family. You felt the warm, humid air of the workshop turn cold and suffocating. You had come here seeking truth, and you had found it. It was far uglier and more personal than you could have imagined. Kagekatsu was right. You were in danger. Thank you for your time, Yamauchi-sama, you murmured, your voice barely audible. You gave a stiff bow, your eyes fixed on the dark, wet character for debt she had painted. Be well, Araki-san, she said, her voice dismissing you completely as she turned back to her vats of pulp. And do try to stay clean. It is a difficult world for things that are easily smudged. Quote, you backed out of the room, past the silent assistant, past the swimming carp, and pushed open the screen door, stumbling back into the snow-filled street. The cold air was a relief, a slap that brought you back to your senses. The pristine white snow no longer looked pure. You could see the dirt beneath it now, the mud and grit and ancient, bitter grudges that the world tried to cover up. You had walked into the papermaker's workshop, an honest woman, driven by a naive belief in justice. You walked out a marked woman, carrying the chilling knowledge that you were not just a bystander to a political event, but a character in someone else's cruel and patient story of revenge, and you had no idea how it was meant to end. The walk back to your workshop was a blur of white snow and black fear. No's final words, do try to stay clean, echoed in your mind, a silken threat that clung to you like the damp cold. You saw her eyes everywhere, in the dark knots of the wooden fences, in the glossy reflections of wet stones, in the endless, swirling snow. Kagekatsu's advice was the voice of reason. Be small, be invisible, survive. But reason felt like a coward's comfort. It tasted like ash in your mouth. You slid open the door to your workshop, and the familiar smell of wet clay and pine smoke rushed to meet you. It was the scent of your life, of honest work and simple purpose. You looked at the rows of unfired tiles, each one a small, gray promise of shelter. You ran a hand over the smooth, curved surface of a finished kawara, its fired glaze cool and solid beneath your touch. This is what you did. You protected people from the storm. How could you huddle in your own shelter while your kin, however distant, was left to face the tempest alone? Lady Misako wasn't a twisted branch or a stain. She was a person, a woman whose life was being erased by a century-old grudge, written off like a bad character on a sheet of fine paper. Noe Yamauchi had her legacy. Lady Misako had only the whisper of a name, soon to be forgotten on a windswept island. And you had your hands, you had your feet. You had a stubborn, foolish optimism that refused to believe cruelty was the final word. The decision settled not like a thought, but like a fire being lit in your chest. Fear was a cold thing, but purpose was warm. You would go to her. You couldn't stop the exile, you couldn't face down the shogun's guards, but you would not let her be forgotten. You would bring her a token of kinship, a reminder that someone in this vast, cold world knew she was real. You would go to the Red Pagoda. The officials had made it a prison, but it was still a part of the city. It was not Sado. Not yet. Your first stop was the scent of steel and clove oil. You found Kagekatsu exactly where you'd left him. The rhythmic ask of his work, a steady heartbeat in the quiet alley. You didn't need to say a word. He looked up from his whetstone, took one look at the resolve etched on your face, and let out a long, weary sigh. No, Emi, he said, before you could even speak. Don't even think it. You went to see her, didn't you? I can see it in your eyes. You poked the hornet's nest. I have to go to the pagoda, you said, your voice quiet but firm. I have to try and see her, or at least let her know she isn't alone. That is a death sentence, he said flatly, setting his blade down with a sharp click. He stood up, towering over you in the small room. Noe is not a character in one of your bedtime stories. She is a predator. She will have watchers everywhere. The pagoda will be crawling with guards who would cut you down for looking at them sideways. What can you possibly hope to accomplish? Quote, I can bring her food, you countered, your voice rising with passion. I can bring her a warmer cloak. I can look a guard in the eye and tell him that Lady Yamauchi Misako has family who has not abandoned her. I can be a speck of grit in Noe's perfect, clean story. Isn't that what you do, Kagekatsu? Find the flaws. Quote, He stared at you for a long moment, his face a storm of frustration and concern. You saw him wrestling with his protective instinct, with his pragmatic understanding of the world. Then, something in his expression softened. It was a flicker of reluctant admiration. He saw that same stubbornness in you that had defined your family for generations, the same spirit that had led your parents to choose a life of honest mud over one of false silk. He turned away and walked to a heavy wooden chest in the corner. He knelt and lifted the lid. After a moment of rummaging, he returned with a small, flat object wrapped in dark cloth. He pressed it into your hand. It was heavy, solid. You unwrapped it. It was a tanto, a small dagger, its handle wrapped tightly in black cord, its sheath plain and unadorned. It was simple, functional, and deadly. This is not for fighting, he said, his voice low and serious. You are not a warrior, Emi. This is for a choice. If they catch you, if there is no other way out, it is a kinder end than what Noe's people would provide. A cleaner one. The grim reality of his words hung in the air between you. He then pressed a small leather pouch into your other hand. It clinked softly. Money. For bribes. Not everyone is a fanatic. Some are just cold and underpaid. Quote, He met your eyes. Go at the hour of the rat, after midnight. The guard shifts change, and they are sleep-drunk and careless. Stick to the alleys behind the dying vats. The smell keeps most people away. Do not carry a lantern. Let your eyes adjust. Let the snow be your light. He was no longer trying to stop you. He was helping you survive. You spent the next few hours preparing, your every movement filled with a new and terrifying purpose. You packed a small bundle, a thick wool shawl, 2 hard-boiled eggs, and a handful of sticky rice balls wrapped in bamboo leaves. You took your small purse of coins and added kagekatsus to it. Lastly, you chose one of your own creations. Not a large roof tile, but a small decorative asterisk onagawara, a demon-faced tile meant to ward off evil spirits. It was no bigger than your palm, perfectly formed and fired. A small, fierce protector. You wrapped it carefully and tucked it deep inside the bundle. You strapped the tanto to your calf, hidden beneath the layers of your kimono, its cold weight a constant grim reminder of the stakes. When the temple bells tolled midnight, you slid open your choji screen and stepped out into a world remade. The snow was falling again, thick and silent, erasing the world you knew. Under Kagekatsu's advice, you plunged into the labyrinth of back alleys, a shadow moving through a city of ghosts. The main streets were rivers of white, patrolled by the occasional samurai, their lanterns casting long, dancing shadows. But here, in the narrow passages between workshops and storehouses, you were invisible. The air was thick with the stench of the dyer's vats, a sharp chemical smell that stung your nostrils but provided perfect cover. You moved by instinct, your feet finding the familiar paths you took to deliver your wares. But tonight, every familiar corner held a new menace. A pile of discarded crates looked like a crouching man. The creak of a sign swinging in the wind sounded like a footstep behind you. Twice you pressed yourself into a recessed doorway, your heart hammering against your ribs. As a patrol passed the end of the alley, their voices muffled by the snow. You were a tile maker. You belonged in the daylight. This skulking, this fear, it was a costume you wore, and it fit poorly. As you neared the commercial district, you realized you had to cross a wider, more populated street to get to the hills where the pagoda stood. A wooden bridge arched over a frozen canal, and you could see 2 guards stationed at its center, their polearms resting on their shoulders, their breath pluming in the cold. They weren't shogunate officials, just local asterisks ashigaru, but they would question a lone woman traveling this late. You flattened yourself against a wall, your mind racing. As you watched, a small, rickety cart, pulled by an old man bent nearly double against the effort, trundled towards the bridge. His cart was filled with winter radishes. You recognized him. Old Man Ito. Last spring, you had spent 2 days on his son's roof, replacing tiles damaged in a storm. He had insisted on paying you with a hot meal and a basket of the first spring vegetables. On a desperate impulse, you slipped out from the shadows and hurried to his side. "Ito-san," you whispered. He started, his weary eyes widening in the gloom. "Araki-san? The tile maker? What in the world are you doing out in this?" Quote. There was no time for lies. You looked at the guards on the bridge, then back at him. "I have urgent family business. At the Red Pagoda. They won't let me pass." He looked at you, then at the pagoda, its silhouette dark against the snowy sky. He didn't ask what kind of business required a tile maker to sneak through the city at midnight. He just saw the fear and determination in your eyes. He grunted, a sound of weary resignation to the world's troubles. "This world is cold enough without us making it colder for each other," he muttered, echoing the thought you'd had yourself. "Get in, hide under these sacks. Don't make a sound." He helped you clamber into the back of the cart, and you burrowed beneath a pile of empty, musty-smelling rice sacks. They were scratchy and smelled of dust and old grain, but they were a shield. You heard the cartwheels rumble onto the wooden planks of the bridge. "Oi, old man, out late tonight," one of the guards called out. "The radishes won't sell themselves, and my daughter-in-law craves soup," Ito-san called back, his voice steady. "A man's work is never done, is it?" Quote. "True enough. On your way, try not to freeze." Quote. The cart rumbled on. A few minutes later, it stopped. "All right, Araki-san, we're past them." Quote. You emerged, brushing the dust from your kimono. You bowed low to him, your heart overflowing with a gratitude that felt too big for words. "I don't know how to thank you, Ito-san." He just waved a dismissive hand. "You kept my grandchildren dry. It's the same thing. Be safe, little tile maker." He and his cart of radishes disappeared into the snow, a small, humble miracle in the heart of the storm. The final approach to the pagoda was steep and treacherous. The familiar stone steps were buried under a deep drift of snow. The place, usually serene, now felt like a prison camp. Torches were mounted on the outer walls, casting a flickering, hellish orange light. Samurai in stiff kamishimo stood guard at the main gate, their swords visible and their faces grim. This was not the place of worship you knew. You circled the perimeter, hiding in the thick cedar groves that bordered the temple grounds. Getting in was impossible. You sank down behind a large, snow-dusted boulder, despair washing over you. You were so close. The cold was seeping deep into your bones, and your brief surge of courage was failing. Then you saw him. A boy, no more than 14, emerged from a small side gate carrying a broom. It was Kenji, one of the temple acolytes. He began sweeping the snow from the walkway with listless, weary strokes. You knew him. You had once seen him crying because he'd broken a decorative tile from a low wall. Instead of scolding him, you had shown him how the pieces could be fit back together, and gave him a small, flawed tile of your own to keep. You waited until he was near your hiding spot. "Kenji-kun," you hissed. He jumped, dropping his broom. His eyes went wide when he saw you. "Araki-san, what are you? You shouldn't be here." Quote, "I know," you whispered, holding up a hand. "Please. My kinswoman, the noble woman they are holding. I just want to get this to her." You held up your small bundle. "It's just a shawl and some food." The boy's face was a conflict of fear and sympathy. He knew the danger. He worked here. He saw the cold faces of the guards every day. But he also remembered your small kindness. He looked from your desperate face to the imposing temple, now a cage. "I can't let you in," he whispered, his voice trembling. "They would have my head. But the prisoner is being held in the old abbot's quarters at the back of the north wing. They bring her water once before dawn." He glanced around nervously. "Give it to me. I will leave it outside her door. I will say I found it in the snow." Tears of relief pricked your eyes. You handed him the bundle, your fingers brushing his. "Thank you, Kenji-kun. Thank you." Quote. He took the bundle and hid it in the folds of his robe. "Wait here. I will come back if I can." He picked up his broom and shuffled away, a small, brave figure heading into the dragon's den. The wait was the longest of your life. Every gust of wind sounded like an alarm. Every shadow seemed to hold a swordsman. You clutched the cold hilt of the tanto beneath your clothes, Kagekatsu's grim gift feeling more and more real. Finally, you saw Kenji returning, moving quickly along the wall. He reached your hiding spot, his breath coming in ragged puffs. "I did it," he gasped. "I left it by her door. A guard saw me, but I told him I was just cleaning." I don't think he suspected. He then pushed something small and flat into your hand. It was a single crimson maple leaf, impossibly vibrant against the snow, perfectly preserved from the autumn. Scratched into its surface with a pin or a fingernail was a single character. Akiru. Live. You stared at the leaf, the simple character a profound message. It was not a plea for rescue. It was a command, a gift of strength, a shared promise to endure. Lady Misako had received your message of shelter, and had sent back one of life. You looked up at the red pagoda, its 5 tiers reaching into the dark, snowy sky. It was still a prison. Noe Yamauchi was still out there, her web of intrigue tightening around the city. But you were no longer just a tilemaker cowering in her workshop. You had braved the storm. You had found kindness in the shadows. You had touched the hand of your kin through a wall of steel and power. You had carried a promise of shelter. And in return, you had been given a reason to live. Slipping the leaf into your sleeve, you turned your back on the pagoda and melted back into the alleys, the single character for live burning like a hot coal against your skin. The message on the crimson leaf, the single character for live, was a seed. In the days that followed your midnight flight, it took root in the cold soil of your fear and began to grow. You tended to it in the quiet solitude of your workshop, the heat from your kiln like a miniature sun, coaxing it to life. The fear did not vanish. It was a constant, low hum beneath the floorboards of your heart, but now it had a companion, a fierce, defiant resolve that burned with a quiet, steady heat. To live was not merely to survive. To live was to act, to connect, to refuse to be erased. Hiding in the shadows was a form of fading. You would not fade. You chose your tools, not from Kagekatsu's chest of steel, but from your own stacks of fired clay. You loaded a small handcart with your finest work. Not just the standard, curved kawara, but several intricate Onigawara demon tiles, their fearsome faces designed to scare away misfortune, and a dozen flat eaves-end tiles, each decorated with the crest of a chrysanthemum, a symbol of longevity and rejuvenation. You were not a spy with a dagger. You were a craftsman with her wares. This was your truth, and you would use it as your shield. You dressed in your sturdiest work clothes, splashed a bit of clay water on your cheek for effect, and in the stark, bright light of a winter morning, you began to pull your cart through the streets of the capital. The red pagoda, when you finally reached the base of the hill, was a different creature in the daylight. At night, it had been a dark fortress against a swirling sky. Now it was a breathtaking slash of crimson against an endless canvas of white snow and pale blue sky. The 5 tiers of its curved roofs were draped in thick ermine blankets of snow, each layer catching the morning sun and glittering with a light so pure it hurt your eyes. The structure seemed to hum with a silent, ancient power, a beauty that made the presence of the shogun's guards feel like a vulgar intrusion. The air was thin and sharp, and so quiet you could hear the soft thump of snow falling from a heavy pine branch. It was a place of profound isolation, a beautiful prison floating in a sea of white. 2 guards stood at the main gate, the same gate you had avoided in the dark. They were not the severe officials who had visited your workshop, but hardened samurai, their armor showing the scuffs of service, their faces chapped by the wind. They watched your approach with bored, professional disinterest. Their hands rested on their swords, and their eyes missed nothing. You stopped your cart a respectful distance away and gave a deep, formal bow. "Honorable sirs," you said, your voice clear and steady. You were surprised at its firmness. "My name is Araki Imi. I am a roof tile maker." Quote. The taller of the 2, a man with a jagged scar on his chin, grunted. "The temple needs no tiles. Move along." "Forgive my impertinence," you said, bowing again, "but I am not here to sell. I am here to inspect. After a heavy snow like this, the weight can crack the ridge tiles. If even one is broken, meltwater gets into the beams. By spring you have rot. An ancient and honorable structure like this, it would be a tragedy to see it weakened by a few moments of neglect." You spoke with the simple, unadorned authority of your trade. You knew clay and fire and rot. It was a language they could understand. The other guard, younger and less patient, shifted his feet. "The abbot has made no such request." "The abbot is a holy man concerned with matters of the spirit," you replied smoothly, pulling one of the chrysanthemum tiles from your cart. You held it out. "I am a humble craftswoman concerned with matters of the earth, but our purposes are the same, to preserve. May I have your permission just to look? I will be quick, and I will not disturb the tranquility of the temple." You let the word tranquility hang in the air, a subtle acknowledgement of the prisoner within. You also let your hand drift to the small pouch of coins Kagekatsu had given you. The scarred samurai's eyes flickered from the tile, to your face, to the purse. He wasn't a fanatic loyal to Noe's cause. He was a soldier on a cold, boring post. Your story was plausible, your demeanor was respectful, and the promise of a small warmth in his pocket was persuasive. He gave a barely perceptible nod. "The north wing has the oldest roof. The eaves on the west side are particularly vulnerable to wind. Be about your business, and do not stray. We will be watching." "Thank you for your wisdom, honorable sir," you said, pressing a few heavy coins into his gloved hand as you passed. The transaction was swift and silent. The gate was opened just enough for you and your small cart. It closed behind you with a heavy, final sound. You were in. The inner courtyard was a world of profound stillness. The snow was pristine, disturbed only by the footprints of the guards. Your cartwheels cut 2 dark, muddy lines through the perfection. The air was thick with the scent of wet cedar and cold stone. Every sound you made, the squeak of a wheel, the crunch of your sandals, the rustle of your clothes, felt like a shout in a library. You kept your eyes down, feigning intense concentration on the pagoda's roofline. Your heart a frantic drum against your ribs. You could feel the guard's eyes on your back. You pulled your cart slowly towards the north wing, the area the guard had so helpfully and ironically pointed out. You stopped, tilted your head back, and squinted at the eaves as if assessing them for damage. From the corner of your eye you scanned the building. It was a long, low structure connected to the main temple by a covered walkway. The paper screens of the shoji were all closed. blank white eyes staring out at the snow. Which one was hers? You began to work, pulling a small mallet from your cart and tapping gently on the wooden pillars supporting the roof. Thok? Thok? Asterisk. It was a good excuse to move along the building's length, a plausible rhythm of work that covered the sound of your own ragged breathing. You forced yourself to focus on the details. The grain of the wood, the joinery of the beams, the way the snow clung to the decorative carvings. Be the tile maker. Be boring. Be invisible. Then you saw it. On the sill of one window, set back slightly in an alcove, was a single, tiny crimson maple leaf. Your breath caught in your throat. It was a sign, a confirmation. This was her room. You moved your cart closer, your back to the main courtyard, using your body and the cart to shield your actions. You continued to tap on the pillars, your eyes fixed on that paper screen. Was she there? Could she see you? The tile seems strong, a voice said, soft as falling snow. It is the foundation that is rotten. Quote, you froze, your mallet held in midair. The voice had come from the other side of the screen. It was a woman's voice, cultured and clear, but with a thread of weariness running through it. Lady Masako? You whispered, your voice catching. There was a moment of silence. The shadow of a figure moved behind the paper. You are the tile maker, the voice said. The one with the kind hands and the fierce little demon for my wall. Tears welled in your eyes, hot against your cold skin. I am your cousin Emi, you said, your voice thick with emotion. The paper screen slid open just a crack, no wider than your hand. An eye looked out at you. It was a dark, intelligent eye, framed by fine lines of exhaustion, but it held no trace of fear or self-pity. It held the same resilient, unbroken spirit you had sensed in her message. I know who you are, she said, her voice softening. My mother spoke of your family. The Araki branch. The honest ones. She paused. It is a dangerous thing, to be honest in this city. Even more dangerous to be kind. You should not have come. To live is not to hide, you answered, echoing the lesson she had taught you. A faint, sad smile was visible in the narrow opening. Ah, so you understood. Good. The screen slid open a little further. You could see half of her face now. She was thinner than you remembered from years ago, and her regal court kimono had been replaced by a simple, unadorned robe of gray wool. Her elegance was not in her clothes, but in her bearing, the straightness of her spine, the steady calm of her gaze. She was a noble woman still, even in a cage. They let you in? I told them the roof needed mending, you said. It wasn't entirely a lie. This world is full of things that are broken. And you are one of the few who tries to fix them, she said. Listen to me, Emi. There is little time. The guards will grow impatient. Her eye darted for a moment towards the main courtyard, then back to you. My cousin, Noe. She does not build things. She dissolves them. She uses truth like a poison, mixing it with lies until no one can tell the difference. She will not stop with my exile. She is a paper maker who despises a smudged page. Any connection to me, however faint, she will see as a smudge to be wiped away. Kagekatsu warned me, you said. My brother. He polishes swords. He hears the whispers. A sword polisher? Misako murmured, a flicker of appreciation in her eyes. A good ally. He understands the nature of steel. Tell him that Noe's blade is not steel. It is paper. It cuts just as deeply, but you cannot see it coming, and you cannot block it with force. You must be cleverer. You must be like water, which cannot be cut, but which can wear away stone. Quote, her gaze sharpened. She has a weakness, Imai, her pride, her obsession with perfection. A single, ugly, undeniable truth, presented in the right place, could ruin her entire masterpiece of lies. She has built her reputation on being a flawless artist. Find the flaw in her art. Find the stain on her paper. A shout came from the main gate. Tile maker, your time is up! Quote, Masako's eyes filled with urgency. You must go, now. Do not come back here. It is too dangerous. Quote, I won't leave you, you insisted, your heart aching. You are not leaving me, she corrected, her voice firm, imbued with the strength of a commander. You are taking my fight out into the world. I am trapped in this cage, Emi. You are my hands and my feet. Now go, and try to live. The paper screen slid shut. The eye, the voice, the spirit, They were gone. You were left staring at a blank wall of paper and a single crimson leaf. You turned, your movements deliberate, and began to pull your cart back towards the gate. The scarred guard met you halfway. "Find any rot?" he sneered. You looked him directly in the eye, your own gaze steady and clear. "Yes," you said, "but not in the roof." You walked out of the gate, leaving the red pagoda behind you. The snow-covered city spread out before you, a world of beautiful lies and hidden truths. You had arrived that morning, a simple tile maker on a desperate, foolish mission. You were leaving a messenger, a conspirator, a vessel for a noble woman's unbroken will. The weight of it settled on your shoulders, heavier than any load of clay. But you straightened your back and pulled your cart, its wheels cutting a determined path through the snow. You had a new task now. You had to find the stain on the paper. The air in Kagekatsu's workshop felt charged, the familiar scent of steel and oil, unable to mask the new, electric tension you brought in with you. You laid it all out for him, Lady Masako's unbroken spirit, her warning about Noe's ambition, and her final cryptic command, find the stain on her paper. Asterisk. You relayed her words about being water, not stone, about finding the flaw in the artist's work. Kagekatsu listened, his hands still, his usual friendly demeanor replaced by the sharp, focused intensity of a man sighting down the edge of a blade. He did not dismiss your story or call you a fool. He saw the fire that had been lit in you, the fire Masako had entrusted to your care. A flaw in her art, he mused, his voice a low rumble. He walked to a rack and picked up a plain, unadorned sword, holding it as if to test its weight. That is a long game, Emi. Finding a secret, exposing it, that takes time. Time is a luxury Lady Masako does not have. The ship to Sado Island will not wait for us to uncover a century-old grudge. Then we don't play a long game, you said, your voice ringing with a conviction that surprised even you. We play our own. Masako said, I am her hands and feet. Hands and feet can run. His dark eyes met yours, and in them you saw the grim pragmatist warring with the protective brother. Escape, he said. The word was not a question, but a diagnosis. From a temple garrisoned by the shogun's own samurai. It's madness. Is it more mad than letting an innocent woman be erased? You countered. Is it more mad than waiting for Noe to decide that a tile maker and a sword polisher are also smudges that need to be wiped away? We can't just wait to be victims, Kagekatsu. We have to build our own shelter, right now. Quote. He was silent for a long moment, the only sound, the hiss of the wind outside. He carefully placed the sword back on its rack. All right, he said, his voice quiet but resolute. Madness it is, but if we are to step off a cliff, we will weave our own wings first. He motioned for you to sit. A plan is not just a wish. It is a machine. Every piece must fit. Every piece must do its job. So tell me, little cousin, what are our pieces? And so began the weaving. You were not generals with maps and armies. You were a tile maker and a sword polisher, with your own intimate knowledge of the city's bones. You talked for hours, the brazier burning low, Kagekatsu's mind carving routes and timings, your own searching the city's heart for the other broken pieces that might fit with your own. The first allies were the ones already bound to you by threads of kindness. Kenji, the acolyte, your eye inside the pagoda, Old Man Ito, the radish seller, your wheels in the night. But you needed more. You needed skills you did not possess. You needed people driven by the same cold fire that now burned in you. You needed to find Noe's other stains. Your first stop was the Dyer's District, a place of pungent smells and brightly colored banners. But the workshop you sought was silent and gray. The sign, which once proudly displayed a swirl of brilliant indigo, now hung cracked and faded. This was the workshop of Master Jin, a man once renowned for creating a particular shade of persimmon dye so coveted that lords would pay a fortune for a single kimono dyed in its hue. You found him in the back, a husk of a man listlessly stirring a vat of gray, murky water. The air smelled of defeat. His hands, once famous for their skill, were stained and raw. Master Jin? You asked softly. He didn't look up. There is no master here. Only a man who has forgotten the color of the sun. What do you want? I have heard you were a great artist, you began. I was, he rasped, until my art was stolen, until my name was ruined. You knelt beside him, the cold from the stone floor seeping into your knees. By a papermaker, you stated, not as a question. His head snapped up, his eyes blazing with a pain so deep it was almost black. "She came to me years ago," he spat, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. "Noe Yamauchi. She wanted my persimmon dye, my asterisk kakashibu, for a special commission for the emperor's court. She wanted paper the color of a winter sunset. I refused. My secrets are my own. They are my life." He stood and began to pace, his agitation a raw physical force. "So she found another way. A month later, my best apprentice vanished. 2 months after that, a rumor started that my dyes were impure, that they faded in the sun. Then a lord I supplied for years complained his robes had been ruined. It was a lie, a sabotage, but the whispers were enough. My contracts vanished. My name became mud." He gestured around the desolate workshop. "And then, a year later, the court poets were all writing verses on the most exquisite paper, the color of a winter sunset, a triumph of the brilliant artist Noe Yamauchi. Quote, he had been dissolved, just as Masako had described. She left a stain on your life," he said quietly. "I want to help you clean it. Not with whispers, but with action. I want you to help me ruin her masterpiece." Quote, "You told him about Lady Masako. You told him about the escape. You didn't offer him money or glory, only a chance to be the grit in Noe's perfect machine." A flicker of the old artist returned to his eyes, a spark of dangerous creativity. "Revenge is a dye that does not fade," he murmured. He looked at his own stained hands. "I know chemicals. I know powders. I know how to create illusions. I will help you." Quote, "Your next search led you to a noisy market square, a place of boisterous life that felt a world away from Master Jin's silent despair. There, huddled near a sake shop, was a woman playing a asterisk biwa, a pear-shaped lute. Her music was beautiful, a haunting melody that was drowned out by the shouts of fishmongers and the laughter of children. Her name was Fumi, and she had once been the lead musician in Lady Masako's household. Her fingers, though chapped with cold, danced over the strings with an elegant grace. When she finished her song, you dropped a few coins in her bowl and spoke her name. She looked up, her face etched with a quiet, weary dignity. "You have the look of the old house," she said, her voice soft but perceptive. "The Iraqi look, honest." "You knew my family?" "I knew your kinswoman, Lady Masako," she corrected gently. "I served her for 10 years. She treated her artists like treasures, not servants. When she was taken, her household was disbanded. No one would hire me. To have served the traitorous branch of the Yamauchi was a mark of dishonor." Her hands tightened on her asterisk biwa. "Now I play for drunkards who request songs about famous warriors, when all I want to play are the songs she loved, about the moon and the falling leaves." Quote, "We are going to bring her out," you said, your voice a low, urgent whisper. "We have a plan, but we need a diversion. We need a sound loud enough to deafen the guards. We need your music, Fumi-san. Not a sad song for coins, but a great song. A song of liberation." Hope, an emotion she seemed to have forgotten, dawned in her eyes. It was a fragile, watery light, but it was there. "A performance," she breathed. "I still have connections at the Hachiman Shrine. The priests owe me a favor. A sacred Kagura dance for the festival, to pray for the city's peace. The noise, the crowds, it would be the perfect distraction." She smiled, a true and sudden smile that transformed her weary face. "To play for her again, even in this way, yes, my music will be your shield." That night, the wings of your plan were woven. The conspirators, a strange and desperate fellowship, gathered in the warm, metal-scented confines of Kagekatsu's back room. A tile-maker, a sword polisher, a ruined dyer, a dispossessed musician, and the spirit of a young acolyte and an old radish seller. Kagekatsu, with a piece of charcoal on a wooden plank, drew the map. "The ship to Sado leaves in 3 days, he began, his voice crisp and commanding. "We move tomorrow night, during the festival." The machine took shape, each piece clicking into place. Fumi was Phase 1, the diversion. She would arrange the Kagura performance at the shrine on the adjoining hill. The drums and flutes would echo through the district, a joyful, sacred noise to cover their desperate work. The festival would fill the streets, making a single cart and a few shadows nearly invisible. Master Jin was Phase 2, the infiltration. His contribution was a small, innocuous-looking pouch of fine, dark powder. "From a mountain root," he explained, his eyes glittering. "Odorless, tasteless, it will not harm them permanently. But a small amount in their evening soup and their tea, and they will sleep a deep, dreamless sleep for hours. Kenji, the acolyte, would be the one to administer it, his youthful innocence the perfect cover. You, Emi, were Phase 3, the deception. You would pose as a laundress, a role so humble and common it was a form of invisibility. Master Jin held up a bundle of dark blue cloth. He had worked all afternoon, using his forbidden knowledge to dye a simple kimono and trousers to the exact shade of the shogun's guards. A perfect match, he said with grim satisfaction. You would smuggle the disguise in, hidden in a basket of laundry. Kenji, guided by your signal, would ensure Lady Masako was ready. She would shed her prisoner's robes and don the uniform. She would become a ghost in her own prison. Kagekatsu was Phase 4, the shadow, while Masako, disguised as a guard making a final round, walked calmly out a little-used side gate. He would be watching from the cedar grove. If a single alarm was raised, if a single guard did not fall asleep, his sword would be the final, bloody piece of the plan. It was a role he accepted with a heavy, silent nod. Old Man Ito was Phase 5, the extraction. His radish cart would be waiting at the bottom of the hill. A false bottom, crudely but effectively built by Kagekatsu, would hide their precious cargo. They would not take the main road, but a series of forgotten logging trails that Kagekatsu had known since he was a boy. Their destination, a tiny, unnamed fishing village, a day's ride to the south, a place so insignificant it didn't exist on any official map. The plan was laid bare on the wooden plank, a desperate sketch in charcoal. It was intricate, dangerous, and reliant on a dozen things, all going right. You looked at the faces around you, illuminated by the single flickering lamp. The bitter dyer, the proud musician, the grim swordsmith. They were not an army. They were the city's forgotten, the dust swept into the corners by the powerful. They were the stains on Noe Yamauchi's perfect page, and tomorrow you would all rise up to ruin it. The night of the festival is a living thing, a great beast of sound and light and motion. From the adjoining hill, the thunder of Fumi's taiko drums rolls across the rooftops, a primal, joyful heartbeat that shakes the very air. The high, piercing notes of a flute dance over the rhythm, a melody of sacred celebration. The city below is a river of light, 1,000 paper lanterns bobbing in the dark, carried by crowds surging towards the Hachiman shrine. The wind carries the scent of roasted chestnuts and sweet sake, a thick, festive perfume that does little to mask the sharp, metallic tang of your own fear. Tonight, you are not a tile maker. You are a loose thread, and you are about to try and unravel a masterpiece of cruelty. Your first glimpse of the plan in motion is a flicker of movement inside the pagoda's walls. Kenji. You see his small silhouette cross a lighted screen in the kitchen wing. In your mind's eye, you see him, his hands trembling slightly as he pours the evening tea for the guards. You picture Master Jin's fine, dark powder, a secret held in the fold of a sleeve, dissolving into the steaming liquid. You imagine the boy's innocent face as he offers the cups, bowing low, his heart a frantic bird in his chest. You send a silent prayer into the festive air, a prayer that his courage holds, that his hand is steady. An hour passes. The drumming from the shrine grows wilder, more frenetic. It is time. You heft a large wicker basket filled with folded laundry, its clean, lye-soap scent a fragile shield against the night's dark business. Hidden in the bottom, beneath a layer of rough cotton towels, is the dark blue uniform Master Jin prepared. Its color is a perfect lie. You walk towards the pagoda's side gate, the one used by servants and tradesmen. You are Emi the laundress, a woman so common she is invisible. Your back is straight, your steps are measured, your face is a mask of weary indifference. A single guard stands at the gate. He is young, and he leans heavily on his polearm, his head nodding with a profound sleepiness. The drumming seems to annoy him, and he rubs his eyes, his movements sluggish and uncoordinated. Master Jin's powder is working its magic. "Halt," he mumbles, his voice thick. No one enters. Quote, "Laundry," you say, your voice flat and tired. "From the captain's personal effects. He wants it before the morning watch." You invent the lie on the spot, banking on the fact that no half-asleep subordinate will question a direct order from his superior. The guard blinks at you, his mind moving as slowly as river mud. The effort of thinking seems too much for him. "Laundry," he repeats dumbly. He looks at your basket, then back at your face. He shrugs, a gesture of complete surrender to his fatigue, and unlatches the gate. "Be quick about it." You slip inside, your heart hammering. The inner courtyard is eerily quiet. a stark contrast to the riot of sound from outside. The torches cast long, dancing shadows. In the main guardhouse, you can see slumped figures. Two samurai are fast asleep at a table, their heads resting on their arms. The powder was a success, but you know not all of them would have taken the tea. You move quickly, hugging the shadows of the north wing, your soft-soled sandals making no sound on the cold stone path. You reach the blank paper screen of Masako's cell. The crimson leaf is still there on the sill, a tiny beacon of defiance. You tap lightly, a prearranged signal, 3 soft knocks, like a woodpecker. The screen slides open a crack. Lady Masako's eye, sharp and alert, appears in the gap. There are no words. There is no time. You place the heavy laundry basket on the ground and pull out the guard's uniform. You push it through the opening. Her hand, cool and steady, takes it from you. The screen slides shut. You wait, every nerve screaming. The taiko drums reach a crescendo, a thunderous, heart-stopping volley of sound that seems to shake the very foundations of the pagoda. It is Fumi's signal. The climax of the sacred dance. The moment of greatest distraction. A shadow moves behind the screen. The paper door slides open. It is not Lady Masako who steps out. It is a samurai. For a terrifying second, your mind freezes. The plan has failed. You've been discovered. Then the figure turns its head, and in the flickering torchlight, you see Masako's features beneath the helmet, her jaw set, her eyes burning with a fierce, dangerous light. She has bound her hair tightly and tucked it away. The borrowed uniform, though slightly too large in the shoulders, transforms her. She is no longer a prisoner. She is a hunter. She gives you a single, sharp nod, a silent thank you that carries the weight of 1,000 words. She draws the short sword from the scabbard at her hip, a guard's standard issue weapon, and begins to walk, her stride confident and purposeful, towards the far side gate, the one that leads out into the cedar grove where Kagekatsu waits. She is making her final rounds. She is one of them. She is invisible. You watch her go, a ghost moving through her own prison. She passes the main guardhouse, her posture unwavering. One of the slumped figures stirs, lifting his head with a groan. Your blood runs cold. The guard squints, his eyes trying to focus on the figure of his comrade walking through the courtyard. He seems about to call out, but at that exact moment, a volley of fireworks, part of the festival's climax, explodes over the shrine, a shower of brilliant peonies of light that illuminates the entire sky. The guard's head snaps up towards the spectacle, distracted. Masako uses the moment to melt into the shadows near the outer wall. Freedom is 50 paces away. 40. 30. Your own escape is secondary. You flatten yourself into an alcove, ready to slip away once she is clear. The gate is just ahead. A beautiful performance, don't you think? Quote. The voice, calm and clean as freshly made paper, cuts through the night. It comes from the shadows by the gate, the one place you had not thought to look. And a figure steps out into the torchlight. It is Noe Yamauchi. She is not dressed in her simple artist's kimono. She wears a magnificent robe of dark silk, embroidered with silver threads that seem to drink the light. Her face is a placid mask of polite inquiry, but her eyes, dark and still, are fixed on the approaching figure of the uniformed Masako. She is not alone. 2 large, stone-faced men in plain, dark clothes stand behind her, their hands never straying far from the swords at their belts. They are not shogunate samurai. They are her own. The world seems to shrink to this single, terrible tableau. The celebratory drums from the shrine suddenly sound like a funeral dirge. Masako freezes, her hand tightening on the hilt of her sword. Her disguise has failed at the final moment. I confess, I am surprised. Noe continues, her voice a silken murmur. I had thought you a creature of more subtlety, cousin. A midnight escape dressed in the clumsy clothes of a common soldier? It lacks artistry. It's so tactile. From your hiding place, you see it all. This is the end of the plan. The machine has broken. But as you look at Noe's perfect, serene face, at her complete and utter confidence, something shifts inside you. The fear is still there, a cold knot in your stomach, but the fire Masako entrusted to you roars to life. You were never meant to be a spy. You were meant to be a speck of grit. You were meant to be a stain. You step out of the shadows. "It is you who lacks artistry, Yamauchi-sama," you say, your voice clear and strong. Noa's head turns slowly, her eyes registering your presence with a flicker of mild annoyance, as if noticing a fly on a pristine scroll. "Ah, the tile maker, the little clump of clay. I had wondered where the dirt came from." Quote, "You speak of artistry," you continue, taking a step forward, drawing her attention away from Masako. "But a true artist creates. You only steal and trace over the work of others." Noe's faint smile tightens. "You should be careful, little tile maker. Words have consequences." "I know a dyer named Jin," you say, the name a stone thrown into her placid pool of power. You see a flicker of something in her eyes, a momentary loss of composure. "He created a color like a winter sunset. A masterpiece. A color you claimed as your own after you ruined his name with whispers and lies." Quote, you take another step, the two guards behind Noe tense, their hands moving to their swords. Masako remains frozen, watching, understanding your strategy. "I know a musician named Fumi," you press on, your voice rising. "Her music once graced the halls of a noble house, a house you dismantled out of a century-old grudge. Tonight, her music is the sound of this city's joy, while you stand here in the dark, a creature of shadows and stolen things. Who is the true artist, Noe-sama? The one who fills the world with beauty, or the one who leaves behind empty workshops and silent instruments?" Quote, you are shouting now, your voice raw with the anger of all her victims. "You are not an artist. You are a forger. Your life's work is a lie, written on stolen paper with stolen ink." Quote, "Silence her," Noe commands, her voice losing its silken edge, becoming as sharp and cold as splintered ice. Her two guards start towards you, their swords half drawn. But before they can take 2 steps, a shadow detaches itself from the deeper darkness of the cedar grove. "I would not do that," Kagekatsu says. He moves with a fluid, silent grace that is terrifying. He holds a sheathed sword, but he holds it with a casual deadliness that promises blinding speed. He positions himself between you and Noe's men, a silent, grim protector. The confrontation is now a deadlock, a standoff under the flickering torches and the distant, dying fireworks. Noe looks from you, to Kagekatsu, to the disguised Masako. Her perfect plan, her clean page, has become a mess of unexpected characters. Her face, for the first time, is a mask of pure fury. The artist has lost control of her creation. "Kill them all," she hisses. "Leave no one." Quote, it is the moment Kagekatsu was born for. He does not draw his sword. He takes one swift step backward, grabs your arm, and shoves you towards the side gate. "Go! Now! To the cart!" he yells. To Masako, he shouts, "Run, my lady! Live!" Chaos erupts. Noe's men lunge, not at you, but at Masako, their primary target. But Kagekatsu is there, a whirlwind of motion. His sheathed sword becomes a blur, a solid instrument of force. He doesn't cut. He strikes. A sharp crack as he disables one man's wrist. A heavy thud as the hilt of his sword slams into the other's temple, sending him staggering back. Masako doesn't hesitate. She turns and sprints through the gate, disappearing into the darkness of the grove. You run, stumbling after her, your heart screaming in your chest. You can hear the sounds of the fight behind you, grunts of pain, the sickening thud of blows, the sharp, enraged commands of Noe. You burst from the trees at the bottom of the hill. There, shrouded in mist, is Old Man Ito's cart. He sees you, his eyes wide. Masako is already there, vaulting into the back. "Go!" she cries, pulling you in with her. "He's right behind us." You look back. Kagekatsu is holding them off, a single grim figure against 2, but Noe is there, her face contorted with rage, pointing, screaming for other guards to awaken. Your escape is not clean. You have left your brother behind, fighting in the dark. "We can't leave him!" you cry, trying to scramble out of the cart. Masako's hand, strong as iron, holds you back. Her eyes, filled with a terrible wisdom, lock with yours. "We must. This is his choice. This is his part of the plan. To get us away. To live is to honor his sacrifice." Quote, the cart lurches into motion, Old Man Ito whipping the reins, plunging down a dark, narrow track away from the festival, away from the pagoda, away from the life you knew. The last thing you see is Kagekatsu, a lone warrior holding back the tide, and the pristine, perfect papermaker Noe Yamauchi, her masterpiece in tatters, screaming for your blood in the cold night air. The world is a violent, lurching blur of dark trees and flying snow. The cart rattles and jolts over the forgotten logging trail, each rut in the frozen earth a brutal shock that travels up your spine. You cling to the rough wooden sides, the splinters digging into your palms. Beside you, Masako is a ramrod-straight figure, her face a mask of grim focus, the borrowed guard's helmet still on her head. Her hand rests on the hilt of the short sword, a constant, chilling reminder of the violence they have just fled. Old Man Ito, a dark silhouette against the chaos, whips the reins, his grunts of effort lost in the rattle of the wheels and the pounding of your own heart. Kagekatsu. The name is a wound in your mind. You can still see him, a lone shadow holding back the tide, his sheathed sword a cudgel against Noe's assassins. You left him. You ran while he fought. The guilt is a physical sickness, a cold, heavy stone in the pit of your stomach. He knew the price, Masako says, her voice low and steady, cutting through your panic. She must have seen the despair on your face. We all knew it. His fight gives ours meaning. Do not waste it. Her words are hard, but they are also a lifeline. She is right. To fall apart now would be to spit on his sacrifice. You take a shuddering breath, the frigid air searing your lungs, and force yourself to focus. You look back. The lights of the pagoda are gone, swallowed by the forest and the snow. But another sound begins to reach you, faint at first, then growing steadily louder. It is not the celebratory drumming of the festival. It is the rhythmic, frantic pounding of hoofbeats on frozen earth. Horses? Ito-san rasps, not needing to look back. They're faster than this old mule. We need to lose them. The trail ahead forks. One path continues its winding, rutted course. The other plunges sharply down a steep embankment towards the sound of rushing water. Without hesitation, Ito yanks the reins, guiding the straining mule down the treacherous slope. The cart groans in protest, sliding more than rolling, threatening to tip over at any moment. Low-hanging pine branches whip at your faces, scratching your skin, their needles cold and sharp as daggers. You press yourselves flat against the floor of the cart, the world tilting at a sickening angle. At the bottom of the embankment is a narrow, rickety-looking bridge spanning a black, fast-moving river. The water churns with slabs of ice, a deadly torrent that no horse would dare to cross. The bridge is their only hope. The cart's wheels slam onto the wooden planks with a deafening clatter. The entire structure sways and groans beneath the weight. "Faster, old friend, faster!" Ito mutters to his mule, his voice a low plea. The hoofbeats are louder now, right behind them at the top of the slope. You hear a man shout, an order lost in the wind. They've been seen. The cart rumbles across the halfway point of the bridge. Planks tremble under the wheels. You can feel the rot in the wood, the fragility of their escape route. They reach the other side. As soon as the wheels touch solid ground, Ito-san leaps from his seat with surprising agility. He turns and, with a powerful kick from his straw-sandaled foot, strikes one of the main support beams where it meets the riverbank. There is a splintering crack. The wood, old and waterlogged, gives way. With a great, groaning tear, a huge section of the bridge collapses into the churning river, its planks swept away by the icy current. On the other side, two samurai on horseback rear their mounts to a halt, their way completely blocked. Their shouts of fury are carried away by the wind. You have a lead. A fragile, temporary one. That won't hold them for long, Ito says, climbing back into his seat. They'll find another crossing upstream. We have to leave the trail. And the cart. He guides the mule another few hundred yards into a thick, ancient grove of cedar trees where the snow lies deep and undisturbed. The air here is still and heavy, the trees so dense they form a ceiling that muffles all sound. "This is as far as I go," he says, his breath plumbing. "From here, you are ghosts. Follow the creek north until you see a rock shaped like a sleeping bear. Hide in its shadow. I will circle back, if I can." His face, in the deep gloom, is a mask of weary resolve. He does not need to say the rest. If he is caught, he will never see you again. You scramble out of the cart, your legs stiff and clumsy. Masako is already on the ground, pulling the helmet from her head and tossing it into the undergrowth. Her long hair, freed from its confinement, tumbles down her back, a cascade of black silk against the borrowed blue uniform. "Ito-san," you say, your voice thick, with a gratitude that feels utterly inadequate. "Thank you." He just grunts, a dismissal of your thanks and an acknowledgement of your shared peril. He gives the reins a sharp tug, turning the cart around to create a false trail, and disappears back into the woods. A humble radish seller who has become a kingpin in your desperate rebellion. You are alone. You and a noblewoman dressed as a soldier, standing in the heart of a silent, snow-filled forest. The only sound is the whisper of falling snow and the frantic beating of your own heart. "This way," Masako says, her voice barely a whisper. She takes the lead, moving with an unexpected grace through the deep drifts. She is no stranger to this. You remember tales of her childhood, before court life claimed her, spent riding and hunting on her family's northern estates. That forgotten girl is the one saving you now. You follow, stumbling in her wake, your city dweller's sandals a poor match for the treacherous terrain. Every snap of a twig under your foot sounds like a gunshot. The cold is a physical presence now, a predator that gnaws at your fingers and toes, seeping through your thin laundress's clothes. You look back, half expecting to see the light of lanterns bobbing through the trees. The pursuit, when it comes, is not what you expect. There are no shouts, no crashing through the undergrowth. There is only a dog. A single, sharp bark echoes through the trees, closer than you'd thought possible. They have trackers. The samurai on the other side of the river must have had hounds with them. Panic, cold and sharp, seizes you. "They'll find us," you gasp, your breath clouding in front of your face. "We can't outrun a dog." "Then we don't run," Masako says, her voice dangerously calm. She pulls you behind a massive fallen log, its surface thick with moss and snow. She crouches low, pulling the short sword from its scabbard. The blade gleams, a sliver of deadly moonlight in the gloom. We wait. The barking grows closer, more frantic. You can hear the sounds of men now, their movements deliberate, spreading out. They are close. You hold your breath, your lungs burning. You can smell the wet earth, the sharp scent of pine, the faint animal scent of the approaching hound. The dog bursts into the small clearing ahead of you, a lean, dark beast. Its nose to the ground, its tail erect. It stops, its head snapping up, sniffing the air. Its dark eyes seem to lock directly onto your hiding place. It lets out a triumphant, baying howl. This is it. It's over. But as the dog opens its mouth to bark again, a dark shape drops from the branch of a tree above it. Kagekatsu's Tanto. You hadn't even realized Masako had it. She must have taken it from you in the cart. She moves with a fluid, lethal precision that is terrifying to behold. She lands silently, one hand clamping over the dog's muzzle, stifling its cry, the other driving the short blade cleanly into its side. The animal gives a single, muffled yelp and collapses into the snow, its struggles brief. Masako rises, her face grim, the dagger dripping a dark stain onto the pristine white. A noble woman, a poet, a prisoner, and now a killer. She looks at you, her eyes filled not with triumph, but with a deep, chilling sadness. "This is the world Noe has made," she whispers. "Hitoshi, where are you?" A man's voice calls out, not 20 yards away. A lantern sways through the trees. Masako grabs your arm, her grip like iron, and pulls you deeper into the woods, away from the path of the approaching men. You run, blindly, fueled by pure adrenaline, scrambling over rocks and through thickets that tear at your clothes. You run until your lungs feel like they are on fire, until your legs are numb and heavy as stone. You finally stumble to a halt at the edge of a small creek, its water a black ribbon running through the snow. And there, on the far bank, is a massive boulder, its shape uncannily like that of a great bear curled up for a long winter's sleep. The landmark. You splash through the freezing water, the shock of the cold so intense it steals your breath. You scramble up the bank and collapse into the deep shadow cast by the rock, huddling together for warmth, your bodies racked with shivers that are only partly from the cold. You are hidden, for now. You listen, straining to hear any sound of pursuit over the rushing of the creek and the pounding of blood in your ears. Minutes stretch into an eternity. The forest is silent again. The falling snow, once a threat that held your tracks, is now a blessing. A soft white curtain erasing your passage, shrouding you from the world. You begin to believe you might have made it. A low whistle, like the call of a night owl, cuts through the stillness. It comes from further down the creek. Masako stiffens, her hand going to the bloody dagger, but you recognize it. It's the same signal Ito-san used to use when delivering vegetables to the back of your workshop. You rise on trembling legs and half stumble, half run towards the sound. You round a bend in the creek and see it. A tiny, dilapidated hut, barely more than a shed, tucked so deep into a hollow it seems part of the earth itself. A thin curl of smoke rises from a clay chimney, a fragile plume against the dark sky. Old Man Ito stands in the doorway, his weathered face breaking into a rare, gap-toothed smile of relief. "I was beginning to think the wolves had gotten you," he says, his voice gruff with emotion. You stumble inside, into a wave of impossible warmth. The hut is tiny, a single room, but it is clean. A fire crackles in a small stone hearth, casting a warm, golden glow on the rough-hewn wooden walls. There is a simple mat on the floor, a clay jug of water, and the smell of fish soup simmering over the fire. On a small table, someone has placed 2 ceramic bowls and a pair of mismatched cups. It is the most beautiful palace you have ever seen. The door closes, shutting out the cold, the forest, and the hunt. The only sounds are the crackle of the fire and the distant, soothing murmur of the sea. It's over. You are safe. The strength that has carried you through the night dissolves in an instant, and a great, shuddering sob escapes you. The fear, the grief for Kagekatsu, the sheer bone-deep exhaustion, it all comes rushing to the surface. You sink to your knees on the mat, tears streaming down your face, unable to stop. You feel a hand on your shoulder. You look up into Lady Masako's face. She has taken off the blood-stained guard's uniform and is wrapped in a simple wool blanket Ito must have left for her. In the soft firelight, the hard lines of the warrior have softened. You see the noblewoman again, but stripped of her silks and titles, you also see the woman, her eyes full of a shared exhaustion and a profound, quiet gratitude. "We did it, Imi," she whispers, her voice raspy. "You did it." She kneels beside you, not as a noblewoman comforting a commoner, but as a fellow survivor. She picks up your hand, her fingers tracing the calluses and clay stains that mark you as a tile maker. "You came for me with your hands, with your honest craft," she says, her voice thick with unshed tears. "You faced down a woman who deals in lies, and you fought her with the simple, solid truth of who you are. Your brother said you saw the surface of things. He was wrong. You see the foundation, and you are not afraid of the mud." She reaches into a fold of the blanket and pulls something out. It is the small, fierce *Onagawara demon tile you packed in her bundle what feels like a lifetime ago. She places it on the hearth, where its defiant face is illuminated by the flames, a tiny guardian for your new, temporary home, a protector you brought for her, a role you ended up playing yourself. You look from the tile, to Masako's weary but determined face, to the dancing flames. The world outside is still full of danger. Noe Yamauchi is still out there, her rage a poison spreading through the capital. Your brother's fate is unknown. The future is a terrifying, unwritten page. But here, in this small, warm room, huddled against the vastness of the sea, you have won. You are not a victim. You are not a smudge to be erased. You are a survivor. You are a rebel. And for the first time in a long time, you are safe. The fire in the hearth is a small, living heart in the body of the hut. It eats the dry driftwood Ito-san has gathered, and breathes out a warmth that feels like a benediction. Outside, the world is a wash of gray sea, white snow, and black forest. A landscape of beautiful, desolate peace. The hours after your arrival pass in a blur of exhaustion and relief. Ito-san ladles hot, salty fish soup into your bowls, and you eat mechanically, the simple nourishment a tether to the living world. You do not speak. There are no words yet for the chasm you have crossed. There are only the shared, silent truths. The tremor in your hand as you lift the cup. The deep lines of fatigue etched around Masako's eyes. The way Ito-san keeps glancing towards the door, listening. In the days that follow, a strange, quiet rhythm establishes itself. The hut becomes your world. It is a tiny Spartan existence, but it is a world without fear of a sudden knock on the door. It is a world without Noe Yamauchi. You learn the language of this new life. You learn the cry of the gulls that wheel overhead, the patient hiss of the tide pulling back from the shore, the deep groan of the cedar trees in the wind. You learn the shape of the rocks, the texture of the sand, the salty taste of the air. Masako, stripped of her silks and titles, seems not diminished but distilled to her purest form. The noblewoman who once commanded servants now learns to mend fishing nets with Ito-san, her long, elegant fingers surprisingly adept at tying the rough, complex knots. The poet who penned verses about the moon now learns to read the tide charts. Ito has scratched onto a piece of slate. She gathers mussels from the rocks at low tide, her sleeves rolled up, her bare feet numb in the icy water. And when she returns, her cheeks flushed with the cold, there is a light in her eyes you never saw in the capital, a look of fierce, elemental satisfaction. "I am a prisoner still," she tells you one evening as you sit by the fire, mending a tear in your tattered kimono. "But my cage is larger now. It has a sky. It has the sea." She looks at you, her gaze direct and full of a profound gratitude that makes your throat ache. "You did not just free me from a room, Emi. You freed me from a role I had forgotten I was playing. My name, my titles, they were just another set of walls. Here," she gestures to the rough-hewn timbers of the hut, "I am just Masako, a woman who is cold and who builds a fire, a woman who is hungry and who finds food. It is an honest life." She reaches out and touches the little demon tile on the hearth. "Like yours." Her resilience is a balm, but it cannot soothe the anxious wound in your heart. Every time a branch snaps in the woods, you flinch, thinking of Kagekatsu. Every time you hear a lonely melody in the cry of the wind, you think of Fumi's *biwa*. Every time you see the brilliant orange of the sunset staining the gray clouds, you think of Master Jin's stolen dye, your small band of conspirators, the forgotten people who rose up to help. What happened to them? Did they pay the price for your freedom? The not knowing is a constant, gnawing torment. On the 5th day, he comes. Old man Ito, who had left 2 days prior with a grim promise to seek news, appears at the edge of the woods. He does not smile. His face is a mask of gray weariness, and he seems to have aged 10 years since you last saw him. You and Masako meet him by the creek, a cold dread coiling in your stomach. He does not make you wait. "The capital is a hornet's nest that you kicked," he says, his voice a low, rough rasp. "Noe Yamauchi's rage is a fire that is burning everything you touched." He tells you the story, piece by brutal piece. The price of your rebellion. "Fumi-san," he begins, and you can see the pain in his old eyes. "The musician. The morning after the festival, the shogun's guards went to the Hachiman shrine. They said the priests had harbored a conspirator. They found Fumi in the square. They called her a traitor's accomplice. In front of everyone, they smashed her *biwa* against the stones. They broke her hands, Emi. Not enough to cripple her for life, but enough so she will never play again. They left her there, her instrument in splinters, her music silenced forever. A public lesson." Quote, "You cry out a sharp, wounded sound and clap a hand over your mouth." Masako closes her eyes, her face tight with a shared pain. Fumi, whose song had been your shield, now silenced. "Master Jin, the dyer," Ito continues, his voice flat, as if reciting a list of the dead. "They found the sleeping guards, and Noe knew it was poison. She had his workshop surrounded, but Jin was cleverer than she thought. He was gone. He left her a gift, though. He had mixed his chemicals, his powders. The whole place went up in a great cloud of stinking, acrid smoke. It burned for a day and a night. The fire spread to the 2 warehouses next to it, both owned by the Yamauchi merchant branch. Noe tried to save a noblewoman, and ended up costing her family a fortune in silk and rice. They say she did not even scream. She just watched it burn, her face like stone. Master Jin had escaped, a small, bitter victory, but he was a fugitive now, a ghost with nothing but the clothes on his back." Ito pauses, gathering himself for the worst of it. He looks at you, his gaze full of pity. "Your workshop, Emi, it's gone. They boarded it up. A sign on the door names you a traitor. Your tiles, your kiln, it all belongs to the shogunate now. They have put a bounty on your head." Quote, "The news lands, but you barely feel it. Your life in the capital was already a ghost. It is the next name, the one you have been dreading, that shatters you." "And Kagekatsu?" You whisper, your voice a thread. "My brother?" Quote, Ito-san looks down at the frozen ground. "He fought like a demon. The 2 assassins Noe brought, he disabled them both. But the pagoda guards, woken by the commotion, overwhelmed him. They took him alive." He looks up, and you see the true horror of it in his face. They did not kill him. That would have been a mercy. Noe wanted a spectacle. They held a public shaming in the main square. They broke his swords, the ones he had polished, snapping the sacred steel over an anvil. They accused him of treason, of conspiring with traitors, of betraying the samurai class he served. They branded his face. He lifts a hand to his own cheek, with the character for liar. Then they threw him in the shogun's prison beneath the castle, the stone fortress, a place no one ever leaves. The world dissolves into a gray, soundless haze. Kagekatsu, your kind, pragmatic, friendly Kagekatsu. A sword polisher whose only crime was to love his cousin, to believe in a small act of justice. Branded. Broken. Buried alive in a stone cage. It is too much to bear. A raw, animal cry of grief is torn from your throat, and you fall to your knees in the snow, the weight of it all crushing you. It was your idea, your stubborn, foolish optimism. You led them all to this. Your hands are not stained with clay anymore. They are stained with the ruin of your friends, with the blood of your brother's life. Masako is there, her arms around you, holding you as you sob, her own silent tears falling into your hair. She offers no empty words of comfort, no false promises that it will be all right. She simply holds you, a solid, living anchor in your storm of guilt and despair, sharing the immense, terrible weight of what you have done. That night, you cannot sleep. You stare into the dying embers of the fire, seeing only the image of a branding iron, hearing only the snap of sacred steel. You have bought this woman's freedom at the cost of everything and everyone you have ever loved. Masako comes to sit beside you in the deep stillness of the night. She does not speak for a long time. She simply shares the silence. Do you know the first thing I did when I found myself truly alone in that room at the pagoda? She finally says, her voice a soft murmur in the dark. I despaired. I saw my future as a slow, fading death on a cold rock in the sea. I saw the triumphant face of my cousin Noe. I saw an ending. She picks up a piece of charcoal from the hearth and draws a single perfect circle on a flat stone. An ending is a closed loop. There is no way out. This, she taps the circle, was my life. Quote. She then draws a line, breaking the circle, extending it outwards. You, Emmy, with your silly bundle of food and your fierce little demon tile, you were this. You broke the circle. You did not offer me an ending. You offered me a continuation. Quote. She looks at you, her eyes reflecting the faint red glow of the embers. What happened to our friends, to your brother, it is a horror. It is a terrible, unbearable price. My heart breaks for them. But it is not an ending. It is the cost of breaking the circle. Noe wanted to write a perfect, clean story, where all her enemies were neatly erased. Instead, you have forced her to write a messy one, a story of fire and public shame and brutal retaliation, a story that shows her true face. People saw what she did to Fumi. The merchants are furious about their burned warehouses. The samurai, who respected Kagekatsu's work, whisper in the barracks about the injustice. You did not just start a rebellion, Emi. You started a story. And stories, once they are loose in the world, are harder to control than any army. Quote. She takes your hand. It is cold and trembling. She holds it tightly in her own. Do not let your grief curdle into guilt. Guilt is a poison. It will turn their sacrifice into a waste. You must live, Amy. You must live with the fire they kindled. You must carry their story forward. That is how we honor them. That is how we win. You look down at your joined hands, the calloused, clay-stained fingers of a tile-maker intertwined with the slender, strong fingers of a noblewoman. Two women from different worlds, bound together by a shared act of defiance and a shared, terrible loss. Her words do not erase the pain, but they give it shape, they give it purpose. You are not just a fugitive hiding in a hut. You are a storyteller now, a keeper of the flame. You look out the hut's single, small window. The first hint of dawn is painting a thin, gray line across the horizon. A new day is coming, a day you must face. The price of your rebellion has been paid in full, in the currency of broken things. Broken instruments, broken hands, broken swords, broken lives. But you are not broken. You are forged. And in the cold, quiet light of the aftermath, you know with a terrible and clarifying certainty that your story and your fight has only just begun. The seasons turn, even for fugitives. Winter's sharp, white edges soften into the wet, gray blur of spring. The snow melts, revealing a world of damp earth, green moss, and the determined shoots of early flowers. You learn to live in this new, quiet world. The grief for Kagekatsu does not leave. It becomes a part of you, a smooth, heavy stone you carry in your heart. It reminds you of the cost. It fuels you. Your hands, which once knew only the feel of clay, learn the rough texture of fishing line, the sharp edge of a gutting knife, the rhythmic toil of mending nets. You work alongside Masako and Ito, a silent fellowship of the shipwrecked, and in the shared labor you find a strange, hard-won peace. Then, one misty morning, when the sea and sky are the same shade of pearl, Ito-san returns. He has been gone for weeks, and the news he carries is etched into every line on his face. He sits with you and Masako by the cold embers of last night's fire, the three of you a small island in the vast silence of the coast, and he tells you the end of the story you began. She drowned in the whispers, he begins, his voice low, the very weapon she used to undo you all. It turned back on her. In the capital, stories are more real than truth. Noe Yamauchi's rage, it turned out, was her undoing. It stripped her of her most potent disguise, the mask of the serene, absent-minded artist. The city saw her true face, and it was ugly. The tale of Fumi's beautiful hands being broken in the public square did not inspire fear. It inspired revulsion. The common folk, who had loved her music, saw not the punishment of a conspirator, but the vicious act of a cruel and powerful woman silencing beauty itself. The story of Master Jin's burning workshop became a legend in the merchant's quarter, not of a traitor brought to justice, but of a master craftsman who chose to destroy his own life's work rather than let it be stolen. Taking two of the Yamauchi clan's most valuable warehouses with him, he became a symbol of defiance, and Noe, a symbol of greedy incompetence. But it was the swords that broke her, Ito says, looking directly at you, Emi. The samurai. They understood Kagekatsu's crime was loyalty, and they understood what it meant to break a man's swords, to brand him a liar for protecting his family. It was dishonorable. It was an offense against their entire code. The whispers in the barracks were louder than any gossip in the marketplace. No had promised the shogun harmony. Instead, she had publicly shamed a respected artisan, angered the city's most powerful merchants, and sown discontent among the samurai themselves. She had become a stain on the city's peace. The shogun, a man who valued order above all else, finally saw the truth. Noe Yamauchi was not a protector of the realm's tranquility. She was the agent of its chaos. Her reckoning, when it came, was not swift and bloody. It was quiet, meticulous, and perfectly cruelly tailored to her. There was no public trial, no execution. That would have been another spectacle, another disruption. Instead, a simple decree was issued. The Yamauchi family was officially censured for disturbing the harmony of the capital. Noe's name was stripped from the family records. Her workshop, her shrine to her own ego, was confiscated, its perfect paper turned over to the imperial scribes. And her? Masako asks, her voice barely a whisper. They gave her a new name, a new life, Ito says, a grim irony in his voice. She was sent to a remote mountain convent, a place of absolute silence. Her head was shaved, her fine silks replaced with rough gray robes. She is to spend the rest of her days making paper, blank paper, for the sutras the other nuns chant. She, who ruled the city with her words, has been condemned to a life without a voice. She is a ghost, already forgotten. The justice of it is so absolute, so complete, that it is almost frightening. She has been erased, just as she tried to erase all of you. Ito-san's story is not finished. He carries the consequences for you all, the heavy coins that have paid for your survival. The shogun, in his effort to smooth things over, issued a second decree. Lady Masako, Ito says, his voice taking on a formal tone, your name is cleared. Your lands and titles have been restored. You are invited to return to the capital. Quote, Masako stares out at the gray, churning sea. She does not look like a woman who has just been handed back her world. She looks like someone who is not sure she wants it anymore. Then, Ito looks at you. The bounty on your head has been lifted, Amy. And Kagekatsu, he has been released. Quote, the stone in your heart cracks open. He's alive. He's free. Tears of pure, unadulterated relief stream down your face. But Ito holds up a hand, his expression still grim. He is free, but he is not the same. The brand, it is a part of him now. He lives in a small room in the artisan's quarter. He does not polish swords anymore. He mends pots and sharpens knives for housewives. He speaks little. They say the light has gone out of his eyes. The image is a fresh wound, a reminder that some things, once broken, can never be made whole again. The fates of the others are scattered seeds. Fumi, her hands forever misshapen, was taken in by the priests at the Hachiman shrine. She cannot play, but her knowledge is a treasure. She now teaches a new generation of musicians, her legacy passed on not through her fingers but through her spirit. Master Jin, true to his nature, vanished like smoke. There are rumors, Ito says, of a mysterious dyer in a remote port town, a man with a scarred face who creates colors no one has ever seen before. He has become a legend, a ghost of his own making. The news settles over the three of you, a heavy blanket of endings and new, uncertain beginnings. Ito-san leaves you with a final gift, a small bag of rice and saltfish, and a sad, knowing look that says his part in this story is over. He turns and walks back towards the world of men, leaving you and Masako alone on the edge of the world to reckon with your own freedom. That evening, you walk with Masako along the shore as the sun sets, painting the clouds in shades of bruised purple and fiery persimmon. Will you go back? You ask, the question hanging between you. She picks up a flat, smooth stone and sends it skipping across the waves. It dances 3, 4, 5 times before sinking into the gray. The woman they invited back to the capital, she no longer exists, Masako says softly. She died in that room at the pagoda. Or maybe she was reborn here, with salt on her hands and the tide in her blood. How can I return to a life of silkscreens and courtly whispers when I know the price of the thread? When I know what it feels like to hold a blade and fight for a single breath? No, my name is cleared. That is my justice. But my life is my own now, to build as I see fit. Quote, she turns to you, her eyes clear and resolute in the fading light. What about you, Imi? Your name is cleared. You are free. Free, the word feels hollow. Free from what? Free for what? Your home is gone, your craft is gone, your brother is a shadow of himself. The city holds nothing for you but ghosts. You look down at your hands. They are chapped from the salt and the cold, scarred from the work of survival, but they are still the hands of a maker. They still know how to build. I don't know, you admit. The truth, a raw ache in your throat. My story in the capital is over. The next morning, while walking by the creek that had once been your salvation, your foot sinks into a patch of soft, wet earth. You reach down instinctively. It's not mud. It's clay. A rich, red-orange clay. Smooth and heavy and full of promise. You dig your hands into it, the familiar feel, a shock, a homecoming. You scoop up a large handful and carry it back to the hut, as if it were a priceless jewel. You don't build a kiln. You don't have the tools or the time. Instead, you sit by the fire and you begin to work the clay. You are not making roof tiles to protect others from the storm. You are making a simple, thick-walled bowl. Something to hold water, something to hold food, something to hold a life. Masako watches you, a soft, understanding smile on her face. As you smooth the rim of the bowl with your thumb, your movements practiced, and, sure, you feel something shift inside you. Your old optimism, the bright, naive faith of the girl in the workshop, is gone forever. It died in the snow outside the pagoda. But in its place is something else, something tougher, something that has been fired in the kiln of loss and grief. It is the quiet, fierce determination of the survivor. You look at the simple, honest bowl in your hands. It is not perfect. It is not a work of high art, but it is real. It is solid. And it is a beginning. Justice was not the restoration of what was lost. The world does not mend so cleanly. Justice, you realize, is this: the chance to sit in the quiet light of a new day, with clay on your hands and a story in your heart, and begin again. The clay is warm. It's a gentle, sun-baked warmth that radiates from the new kiln you built with your own hands. A warmth that feels less like a companion and more like a hard-won truce with the world. You are Emi Araki, and this is your new world. A small workshop on the outskirts of the capital, nestled near a field of swaying barley, smelling of fired earth, summer dust, and the faint salty tang of the distant sea carried on the wind. The city is a low murmur on the horizon, a story you can hear, but no longer have to live inside. Your movements are the same rhythm, the same meditation, scoop, knead, press, but you are not the same. The optimistic girl who found simple joy in the tangible things she created is gone, buried somewhere in the snows of that long winter. You are her ghost, perhaps, or her descendant. You look at the world differently now. You see the foundations. You know how easily they can crack. You lift a finished tile from the drying rack. It is an eaves end tile, a flat, round kawara decorated with a simple, swirling wave pattern. You run your thumb over the design. It is not a chrysanthemum for longevity or a fearsome demon to ward off evil. It is just a wave. A symbol of the sea that gave you sanctuary, a reminder that what is powerful is not always what is still. Water can wear away stone. A whisper can topple a dynasty. You know this now. It is a lesson etched into you as deeply as the brand on your brother's face. The events of that winter are not a story you tell. They are a landscape you inhabit. Some days, you are back in the silent forest, the cold bite of the air sharp in your lungs, the weight of a dying hound, a phantom presence in your arms. Other days, you are in the hut by the sea, the taste of salty fish soup on your tongue, the quiet strength of Masako's hand in yours. She writes to you sometimes, letters carried by trusted merchants. Her words are not those of a noblewoman, but of a farmer. She speaks of the rice harvest, of a newborn calf, of the satisfaction of a well-mended fence. She has built her own shelter, far from the capital's rot. She is living. You place the wave tile on a stack with the others. A local farmer has commissioned them for a new storehouse, a humble structure, but his family will be able to store their grain through the winter, safe and dry. You used to see your work as providing shelter from the rain. Now you see it differently. You are providing a small measure of certainty in an uncertain world. You are giving a family one less thing to fear. This, you have learned, is no small thing. Power is not just the shogun's decree or a papermaker's web of lies. Power is also a roof that doesn't leak. It is a full bowl of rice. It is the ability to sleep through the night, unafraid. The gentle rhythm of your work is broken, not by the sharp, authoritative rap of an official, but by a hesitant shuffle at the edge of your open-air workshop. You look up from your bench, your heart giving a familiar, painful lurch. He stands there, silhouetted against the bright afternoon sun, Uesugi Kagekatsu, your brother. He is thinner than you remember, and his shoulders, which were once so broad and confident, are stooped, as if carrying a weight no one can see. He does not wear the clean, practical clothes of a swordsmith, but the patched, faded robe of a day laborer. And on his left cheek, stark against his pale skin, is the brand, the character for liar, a black, ugly scar that seems to writhe in the sunlight. It is a permanent shout in a world that prefers whispers. He does not meet your eyes. He stares at a stack of unfired tiles, his own gaze as empty as a dry well. The friendly, talkative boy who saw the flaws beneath the surface of things is gone. This man sees only the surface, and finds it wanting. "Emi," he says, his voice a dry rustle of leaves. It is the first time he has come to see you at your new workshop. You don't rush to him. You don't fill the terrible silence with meaningless chatter or expressions of pity. Pity is a kind of poison, and he has had enough of that. You have learned a new kind of compassion, a quieter, more patient one. You simply wipe your hands on your apron, a gesture that still only succeeds in smearing the red clay into a new pattern, and nod towards a low stool near the bench. "The sun is hot," you say. "Sit for a while." He hesitates, then shuffles over and sits, his hands clasped between his knees. The silence stretches, thick and uncomfortable. You turn back to your bench, to a fresh slab of wet clay. You begin to knead it, your movements slow and deliberate. You offer him the dignity of not being watched, of not being the sole focus of your attention. "They're good tiles," he says after a long time, his voice so quiet you can barely hear it over the buzzing of a fly. "The farmer will be pleased." "The clay is good here," you reply, keeping your tone even. "It holds its shape." He watches your hands as you work, as you push and fold and press the air from the dense material. His own hands, which were once so meticulous, so skilled at finding the life in a piece of steel, are now calloused and scarred in a different way. The rough, clumsy wounds of mending broken things. He sharpens kitchen knives, he patches iron pots. He has not touched a sword since the day his own were broken on an anvil. "I saw her," he says, his gaze still on your hands. "Lady Masako. She sent a messenger. A gift. A bolt of fine silk." He gives a short, bitter, soundless laugh. What does a pot-mender do with fine silk? He did not refuse it. That would have been an insult to the sacrifice. But the gift is a burden. A reminder of the life he fought for. A life he can never touch. You finish kneading the clay and press it into a simple, curved mold. You smooth the surface with your thumbs, your touch firm and gentle. You think of what to say. The old Imai would have offered a platitude. You are a hero. Your sacrifice was not in vain. Asterisk. But you know now that words can be hollow things. Honor is not a shield against pain. Instead, you slide a small, flat wooden tool across the bench towards him. A scraper, used for trimming the excess clay from the edges of a molded tile. "The edges," you say simply, not looking at him. "My hands are tired today. Would you?" Quote, "It is a risk, an offering. You are not asking him to polish a blade. You are not asking him to be the man he was. You are asking him to be the man he is now, sitting in your workshop. A man with hands. A man who can still help." He looks at the tool as if it's a coiled snake. His scarred hands tremble slightly. He has been defined by what was taken from him, his craft, his honor, his face. You are offering him a chance to be defined, just for a moment, by what he can still give. He slowly reaches out and picks up the scraper. His grip is clumsy at first. He holds it like a weapon. Then, some old muscle memory seems to assert itself. His fingers adjust. He leans over the freshly molded tile. He works in silence. His first few scrapes are hesitant, gouging the clay too deeply. You say nothing. You simply start preparing another slab. He tries again. The movement is steadier this time, smoother. He draws the wooden edge along the curve of the tile, trimming away the excess in a long, clean curl. He is not just scraping clay. He is creating a clean line. He is bringing a small thing one step closer to its purpose. He finishes the first tile and moves to the next. You work alongside him, a silent team. Scoop, knead, press. He scrapes. The rhythm of the workshop reestablishes itself, but it is a new rhythm, a shared one. It is the sound of two broken people building something together. He does not smile. The light does not return to his eyes. But some of the tension in his shoulders seems to ease. The weight he carries is not gone, but for a little while, he is sharing it. He stays for an hour. When he is done, a dozen perfectly trimmed tiles sit in a neat row. He places the scraper back on the bench. His movements precise, deliberate. "I must go," he says. "A woman needs a cooking pot mended before supper." "Kagekatsu," you say, and he finally, for the first time, meets your gaze. You see the full depth of his pain, the endless well of his loss. But you also see a flicker of something else. A spark, tiny and deep, of the man he was. The man who is still there, buried beneath the scar. "The roof on my hut is old," you say. "I will need help replacing it before the autumn rains." Quote, "It is not a promise of a cure. It is not an offer to fix him. It is a simple statement of fact. A recognition that you still need him. That he is still of use. That he is still your brother." He gives a single, sharp nod, then turns and walks away, his back a little straighter than when he arrived. You stand and look at the row of tiles he trimmed. They are perfect. You pick one up. It is still soft, still fragile, but it holds its shape. You know that when it is fired in the kiln, it will become hard and strong. It will endure the wind and the rain and the snow. It will not be beautiful, but it will be useful. It will be honest. You hold the tile in your hands and look out at the world. You see the deep, brutal lines of power that cut across the landscape. You see the long, cold shadows of conflict and ambition. But you also see the other things now, the things that make up the foundation. You see a farmer's field, a fisherman's net, a shared bowl of soup, a brother's hesitant touch on a piece of clay. You see the thousand small, individual acts of kindness and resilience that hold the world together when the great and powerful try to tear it apart. Your life is not one of silk kimonos or courtly intrigue. It is a life of mud and fire, and you have learned that this is not a lesser life. It is the life of a survivor. It is the life of a maker. And in a world that is constantly trying to break things, to build something, however small, however simple, is the most profound act of rebellion there is. It is the most honest prayer you know. The sun bleeds across the horizon, a wash of persimmon and lavender that reminds you, with a gentle pang, of Master Jin's stolen dye. You watch your brother's figure shrink against that brilliant sky until he is just another shadow swallowed by the coming dusk. You do not feel the hollow emptiness of loss, but the quiet, aching fullness of what remains. He came, he sat, he worked. It was enough, it was a beginning. You turn back to the workshop, your small kingdom of earth and fire. The air is cooling rapidly, and the scent of the nearby barley field is sharp and sweet. The single lamp you lit casts long, dancing shadows that are no longer filled with menace. They are simply the natural companions of the light. You take the tile kagekatsu trimmed, its edges clean and true, and place it carefully on the drying rack. His touch is still on it. A piece of his quiet strength is now part of this small shelter you are building. It is a better legacy than any sword. You don't stop working. The rhythm is a comfort, a prayer. Your hands move through the familiar ballet of creation. But your mind is elsewhere, drifting back through the seasons, tracing the path that led you from one workshop to this one. You think of the hut by the sea, a place that felt more like home than any building you had ever known. You remember Masako's hands, so accustomed to the delicate brush, learning the rough language of fishing nets. You remember the look on her face when she pulled a gleaming fish from the water, a look of primal triumph that no courtly victory could ever match. She taught you that nobility is not a birthright, but a choice you make every day, the choice to endure, to adapt, to find strength in the broken places. Her last letter sits on a small shelf inside your sleeping quarters, its paper rough, its ink simple. It contains no poetry, only a detailed description of how to properly manure a field for winter wheat. It is the most beautiful thing you have ever read. Your hands press a new slab of clay onto the bench, the sound a soft, satisfying thwomp. The sound echoes the fall of the guard's body in the snow-filled courtyard, the memory sharp and unbidden. But the fear is gone. Now it is just a sound, a part of the tapestry of your life. You think of Fumi, her broken hands now guiding the hands of children, her music living on not as a performance but as a seed planted in a new generation. You think of Master Jin, a ghost of smoke and rumor, creating his defiant art in the shadows, his revenge not a single act but a continuous, vibrant existence. And Ito-san, the radish seller who became a kingpin, now back to his quiet life, his heroism a secret he will carry to his grave, known only to the few he saved. They were not an army. They were the city's forgotten, the dust swept into corners. But when the wind rose, it was the dust that blinded the queen. You work through the twilight, the sky deepening from bruised purple to a velvet star-dusted black. A cool breeze whispers down from the hills, rustling the leaves of the bamboo grove that borders your property. Asterisk it sighs, a sound like the tide pulling back from the shore, like the whisper of secrets in a quiet room. It is a lonely sound, but it is not threatening. It is the sound of the world breathing. And then you see it. The first flake of snow. It drifts down lazily in the lamplight, a single, perfect star of ice, melting the instant it touches the dark earth. Another follows, then another. Soon it is a silent, steady fall, a soft white curtain drawing itself around your small haven. You stop your work for a moment and stand, watching it. It is the same snow that fell on the red pagoda, the same snow that covered your tracks in the forest. But you are not the same woman. That snow was an enemy, a shroud. This snow is a blanket. It is a promise of stillness, of a long, quiet sleep for the earth. It is peace. You go inside your small attached hut and stoke the fire in the hearth. On the mantel, the little asterisk Onigawara asterisk demon tile stands its fierce, silent guard. You place Masako's last letter beside it. You are a keeper of stories now, a curator of courage. You pour a cup of hot barley tea, its steam fragrant in the cool air, and bring it back to your bench. You do not need to finish the tiles tonight. There is no desperate deadline. There is only the work, and the night, and the quiet satisfaction of a day well lived. But your hands, of their own accord, find the clay again. The work is not a chore. It is who you are. The rhythmic tapping of your palms on the dense earth is a gentle counterpoint to the soft sigh of the wind in the bamboo. The snow falls. a whispering hush that muffles the distant sounds of the world, leaving you in a bubble of warm light and quiet industry. The kiln, still radiating a deep, gentle heat from the day's firing, hums softly in the corner, a low, resonant drone that is the sound of transformation, the sound of soft clay being made strong. The wind whispers through the bamboo forest. The snow falls softly. The rhythmic tapping of your hands on the clay continues, a gentle rhythm against the quiet hum of the night. You are home. You are safe. You are strong. And as the sounds of the night fade into silence, you carry the memory of Lady Masako's courage, the warmth of unexpected friendships, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Sleep now. You are safe.